and my cock was green by the end of it, and I did not get off.
Warning, this podcast contains violence, sexuality, gore, and other horrible and disturbing things. Listener discretion is advised. Also, the hosts of this venture are ignorant dipshits, so please do not take anything they say as fact. And enjoy the show.
Now, are you sitting comfortably? Good. Then we'll begin.
Today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be.
The atoms in your left hand probably came from a different star than your right hand.
It is our basic human right to be fucked up.
A second plane now has crashed into the other tower of the World Trade Center.
Putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay.
The defendant shall be incarcerated for the rest of her natural life with no possibility of parole.
You are not machines. You are not cattle. You are men.
We were somewhere around Barstow, on the edge of the desert, when the drugs began to take hold.
Occultae Veritatis.
Shrek goes through that every day, and he gets along just fine.
That's a horrific story.
I mean, having a green dick. That's what I was.
Did you take a picture?
No.
God damn it.
Welcome to Occultae Veritatis podcast. I am Ood Gallifrey.
I'm Sage Murray.
Leon Filger.
And in studio with us,
Kaiser.
And
Lord Loki.
Okay, so because I'm pragmatic as fuck, I had to split the explosions episode into a bunch of different parts. So today we're covering the world's largest non-nuclear man-made explosions.
fuck yeah, we voted on that, and Uda and I won.
Oh,
Leon
yeah?
did not win.
Yes,
I did not win.
because volcanoes are OP as fuck, and they're going to get their own episode.
Yep.
So, in order to make the explosion seem bigger and more exciting, we're going to need some poison.
Oh, I clipped. See? I told you.
So, what's your poison?
Okay, well, in your hand there, Ood, is a blue lagoon. Essentially what it is I ran out of ice. I'm terribly sorry, but
No, I ran out of ice. It's my bad.
Well, pretty much what it is it's 2 parts vodka, then
yeah.
2 parts blue Caruso, I don't know how
Carousel.
to say that. It's Curacao?
Carousel.
It's okay.
It's
I'm the king of
Curacao?
mispronouncing shit. People are on my ass on Twitter all the time.
Okay, well, it's blue Curacao then, and then just top it up with lemonade to your taste.
It's delicious. I already had one.
There we go.
In case you missed the memo with my slurring.
Yeah.
And then myself and Sage here, we're drinking what's called a woo-woo.
I like it.
Seriously, a woo-woo?
Yes,
It's
seriously.
delicious.
Now, what it is also 2 shots vodka, and then it's 2 shots peach schnapps.
Fuck
Oh,
yeah.
boy.
It is.
And then top off with cranberry juice. Except when I came here from the store, I didn't grab actual cranberry juice.
No, you
It's
got
cranberry cherry juice.
Yeah.
I'd make that mistake.
It's
But
fantastic.
It's still good.
Does anyone else want to sip?
Yeah. But this Blue Lagoon, those of you that listen to the podcast for a while know that, I'm not a big fan of, beers that taste a lot like beer. I'm a fan of beers that barely taste like beers.
It's good.
It's good.
So,
Try
sweet
this too.
sweet and tasty cocktails that go down a little too easy are just my jam.
Yeah.
Normally, I'm a Caesar person myself, but
Ooh, yeah.
my friend Kajdar, you know him as
good.
well, Ood.
Oh, yes.
He started me on this whole alcohol path, and now I've got a giant poster above my bed of just it's about 48 different recipes of cocktails you can make.
Please feel free to come back and make them all for me.
Oh,
Yeah.
Jesus, no. Some of them will destroy your liver.
yeah.
I'm not sure if you've met me.
After tasting,
It's good.
I think I prefer the Blue Lagoon a little more. I think I'm going to give that an 8 out of 10. It's everything I want in a drink. It's pleasant to drink. It's sweet. It tastes good, and it'll get me drunk.
It's like me.
Oh yes, of course, Sage. Okay, I'll let you guys rate the. Sorry, what was the name of the drink again?
Woo woo.
The woo woo.
Okay, so I had the woo woo. I had a sip of Sage's woo woo, and
Damn right you did.
That's what she said.
It is indeed. It is indeed what she said.
Insert porno music.
and it was like your freshly cleaned vagina.
Good. Good.
Thank you for putting lots of dead air space so I can get the musical cues in there just perfect.
I was glaring at him. Also, you better fucking say something nice.
I'm sure everybody's genitals taste wonderful.
No, the woo woo was like a clean hoo hoo.
That's the
There we go.
That's
No,
the best
both-
one so far.
Both of these drinks are just like super easy to drink.
No, the Blue Lagoon, the Blue Lagoon, was kind of like a lagoon creature. I recently read a book called The Beach by Alex Garland.
I haven't read that book yet.
It's super good. You can borrow it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's one of the best novels I've ever written. It was
You've
good.
ever written?
I've ever read, rather. It was good in the way that the Blue Lagoon was bad.
Oh.
Interesting.
I don't know how that is, but it just was.
Like, you should like it, but you don't?
Like it looked intriguing, but when it went in my mouth, it was disappointing.
Oh no, that's not like me at all. I posted that on a meme page. I should invite you all. I loved them both. I loved them all. I'm easy. That's
okay.
what she said.
I like the beef jerky flavored beer. So what can I mean? Come on.
It didn't taste like beef jerky.
I
you
think
fucks.
I think it did, but I still liked it.
Dynamite is used in so many things. It's used in construction, it's used in mining, bank robberies, cartoonish acts of villainy. Wile E. Coyote, huge fan of dynamite. But the big question is, why does it explode? To answer this question, let's look at gasoline, because gasoline contains a lot of carbon and a lot of hydrogen. Now let's say, just for the sake of example, we had a big old bowl of gasoline. Don't sweat the details, just assume for some reason we have a bowl of gasoline. We thought it would be a good idea. And then I also decided to ignite that. What happens there is that the oxygen, the hydrogen, and the carbon start a reaction, and then soon enough, there's a fireball. But oxygen takes a little while to move into this reaction, so the explosion might not be that intense. Dynamite, however, has two things that could make it much more powerful. First, the chemical in dynamite already contains oxygen. This means that it doesn't have to draw oxygen in from the surrounding air. Second, and here's the kicker, dynamite contains lots of nitrogen, and nitrogen will react very quickly with a tremendous amount of force. Dynamite's not the only thing that contains nitrogen. TNT, nitroglycerin, some of the fertilizers that you hear about mentioned in stories of truck bombs, these all have nitrogen, and they use nitrogen to make these tremendous explosions. Spoiler alert, nitrogen is sort of the Kaiser Sose of dynamite, you know, it's the power behind the curtain.
So today we're going over non-nuclear man-made explosions. But before we do that, I want to educate people about what explosions are. And it seems simple at its face value, but there are certain definitions you need to know to appreciate the size and scale of some of these explosions.
Is what I did in her mouth.
Oh boy. So, an explosion is a large amount of energy being released in a small space.
That's what she said.
Oh yeah. Now, the proportion of that large amount of energy and how small that space is very relative.
Very small space.
Yeah, so it could be like a milliliter of water sealed inside of like a tiny glass tube. That could be, and if you boil that water and the glass tube explodes, that can be a large amount of energy in a small space. But the basic formula for an explosion, like how it actually works, is there's gases and heats expanding from chemical reactions. There's a rise in temperature that causes the gases around the area to expand. And also the water vapor in the atmosphere expands and heats up. And the combination of energy being released, gases expanding, and gases being created by the chemical process creates a whole bunch of energy in a small space that wants to push outwards. So that's what an explosion is, when you have a huge amount of energy and pressure pressing against a small space. Now, what are
that's kind of hot.
Oh, thank you. It is. It gets
a large amount of energy pressing against.
We're getting as hot as 6,000 degrees Celsius today.
I like it.
Yeah. So there's three types of explosives. There's low explosives. Low explosive burn only at the surface. They only burn along like the surface area of what's exposed. And burning follows a path. Have you guys ever watched old West movies where they line out like a line of black powder and they light one end and the fire goes from one end to another?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's an example of a low explosive. If you don't have it contained in a small space, it'll just burn, and it'll burn through contact. And how you define a low explosive?
It's like genital herpes.
Yes, exactly. There has to be contact. Now, how you determine a low explosive? Low explosives burn slower than the speed of sound.
Oh.
Gunpowder is a mixture of three different chemicals, and usually in explosives, these three basic chemical structures are found. So you need a source of oxygen. So in gunpowder, it's saltpeter or potassium nitrate. So when heated, it releases a bunch of oxygen, and fire needs oxygen to burn. You know, remember the fire triangle from high school and all that shit? Second, you need a source of fuel. So what's causing that fire? The second ingredient in gunpowder is charcoal. So that's like a dense carbon... source. When burned, it releases a bunch of energy. The third thing is an intensifier, and in gunpowder, it's sulfur. So basically, an intensifier uses oxygen as fuel to make energy. So it gets oxygen from that saltpeter and turns up the heat and turns out the rate of burning. And those three things mixed together creates a fast-burning powder, and it becomes explosive when you seal it in a small space. So again, an explosion is a large amount of energy being released from a small space. So if you have it inside of a bullet casing and you light it up, that gunpowder lighting up and releasing the energy, the expanding gases and heat pushes the bullet out. So that's what's called a low explosive. There are also high explosives. Now, high explosives are defined as anything that detonates faster than the speed of sound. Now, low explosives burn, high explosives detonate. Burning is when burning goes at the speed of sound, and it's when heat travels along the medium. Detonation is more immediate. It's almost like a nuclear explosion. Detonation means that when one molecule is triggered to start detonating, immediately all the other molecules right beside it begin to immediately detonate. And instead of relying on just the shock wave to travel that force, it's a molecular force, so it explodes so much faster. So a low explosive would explode...
You explode so much faster.
Oh, thank you.
It's not a good thing.
Oh, that's okay. Round 2 is usually... Okay. Anyways, so a low explosive is about 1,200 kilometers an hour or 700 miles per hour. A primary high explosive can be up to 80 times the speed of sound, to give you an example of things exploding. And that's why high explosives are more deadly, because you have that much more force being released in that small amount of time, and it's going to just push things apart that much faster. If you used a primary explosive inside of a gun, instead of the bullet being fired, it would blow that gun apart. The bullet wouldn't have time to travel down the barrier before the force would blow that gun barrel apart. Okay, so there's primary high explosive and secondary high explosive. So a primary is stuff that's really sensitive to heat and pressure. That's the stuff where you see those old movies when they're building the railroad tracks, and there's a guy...
My mind is just super in the gutter.
Oh, yeah? There's a guy that's going to plant a nitroglycerin charge deep in a mine. And he is sweating bullets because he cannot drop this thing or it will explode and he will die. That's an example of a primary high explosive.
Would that be like the old nitroglycerin back in the day? Like...
Oh, yes. Yeah, because if you dropped a vial full of nitroglycerin, that amount of energy from just it being dropped would be enough to detonate it. And remember, detonation is deadly. Yeah. So it detonates in thousandths or tens of a thousandths of seconds. So if you detonate one part of the nitroglycerin in tens of a thousandths of a second, so fractions of a second, the whole mass of the nitroglycerin would be lit up.
I think it's fair to say that we've come far in how safe explosives are now.
Oh, yes. Yeah, we have. There's still accidents, but they're much lower. And we're going to find out about like some of the shit that was pulled off before. So those are primary. Secondaries are ones that have been stabilized. So secondary high explosives are ones that need a high amount of energy to ignite. So if you drop a stick of dynamite or some TNT or some plastic explosive, it's not going to explode on you. You need a high amount of energy. Well, okay. You need a high amount of energy to detonate those things. So that's why you have like blasting cords and you have stuff and sparks and electrical circuits, because you need a high amount of potential energy in order to set the detonation off. Now, a lot of times...
It was like the beginning of my first and second marriages.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Oh, did you know there's a difference between dynamite and TNT?
I did not.
Yes,
I did. Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I just found that out today. So dynamite was invented by Alfred Nobel in 1867. It's nitroglycerin mixed with diatom earth, which means all those little microorganisms that have like a clam-like shell.
Clams, yay.
Yeah, millions of years ago, those things died out. They got ground into just soil, and now you mix them with nitroglycerin, and it makes a more stable product. TNT is a brand new chemical. It's pronounced trinitro-toluene.
Are you sure it's pronounced like that?
I don't think it's pronounced like that.
Because there's a you look up the pronunciation guide.
Pronunciation guide?
Yeah, trinitro-toluene.
Okay, just wait.
I was thinking the ECDC song.
Trinitro-toluene. Trinitro-toluene. Yeah, and it was invented in 1863 by chemist Joseph Willebrand. So dynamite is a mixture between nitroglycerin and dirt, and TNT is a brand new chemical.
Okay, shush.
Yeah, and it's a brand new. Yeah, and it's a new chemical.
Trinitro-toluene. Ha 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 ha. You nailed it.
Oh yes, I did.
Well, damn.
And I made fun of you like an asshole.
Oh, it's okay.
Now, you said that dynamite was invented by Arthur Nobel, correct?
Yeah, Alfred Nobel.
And that is the man that the Nobel Prize is named after, correct?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I was going to ask that. Yeah.
Yeah, he donated. He made tens of millions of dollars off the invention of dynamite, and he was called a killer and like one of the biggest purveyors of human death by the media at the time. And as a way to apologize for that, he invested a bunch of the money he made from dynamite into creating the Nobel Prize. And it's still running to this day.
Sounds like a regular Tony Stark. Nerd out here.
Well, I'll just digress here from the path. But if you keep on going, that in World War I, there was a German chemist named Fritz Haber. And if you actually look at a picture of him, he looks like Dr. Evil with a monocle. It's glorious.
To be fair, a lot of people from the 1800s look like that.
No.
He does.
Yeah.
Or was the amplified version of that?
Now, he invented synthetic nitrogen fertilizer.
Oh, there you go.
Now
we're going to be talking about that.
Yeah, but one of the most interesting things is that he got the Nobel Prize for it. But that was also a key component in making chemical weapons for the Germans in World War I, and they didn't want to give him the Nobel Prize for it. Well, his argument was, Nobel created dynamite, so what the hell are you going to do?
There you go. So a lot of this you'll see why I'm talking about low explosive, primary explosions, high explosions is because when somebody's building a bomb, a lot of times they'll combine these things. So they'll put one of these primary explosives, so one of these things that explodes really easy at the center of a secondary explosive, and they'll use the explosion of the first to trigger the second. And when you see a lot of these huge explosions that men have made, most of them on this list are accidents. Most of the biggest explosions in human history, non-nuclear, are accidents. And it's because they decided to store primary explosives right next to secondary explosives, right next to no explosives. And when one thing explodes, it all goes up. Alrighty.
They're being funny over here.
Oh, that's all right. Okay, so now that we have a good base, we know what explosions are, we know what causes them, we know the different explosives.
I caused them.
We are going to go through the top 10 biggest non-nuclear man-made explosions in history. And it's funny that you mentioned the Soviet Union, because number 1 on the list is the N1 launch explosion in July 3rd, 1969.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Oh, yes. Yeah, so...
I really shouldn't say that, because I bet somebody died or something.
Oh, yes, a lot of...
It's okay.
Well, okay. According to the Russians, there were 0 fatalities. But let's... Okay.
Are we talking to the current Russian Federation, or are we talking like, full-on Soviets, don't let them know anything?
1969, so they were full-on Soviets.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Don't you malign Soviets in this house.
So the N1 rocket experiments were the Soviet Union's attempt to launch a rocket and compete with the Apollo program. They wanted to get something into orbit so that they could get people up there so they could get to the moon. That was the major thing. Now, we beat them to the moon.
By we, you mean Americans. We're Canadian. We beat no one anywhere.
Yeah, that's true. I aligned myself with NASA for space purposes only.
For space purposes.
Yeah. So the big explosion was actually the second attempt. Attempt number 1 flew for 8 seconds. They didn't insulate stuff enough, so vibration shook a fuel line loose. That fuel line started to fire, destroyed the electrical circuit, and all 30 engines of the rocket failed at once, and it crashed down into the Earth. Now, in that explosion, none of the big fuel tanks lit up. The rocket came down, it smashed, the fuel tanks didn't blow up. Yeah.
And
And
like your fuel tanks way though.
oh boy,
I'm sorry, I can't stop.
Well, just to be honest for a little second, that seems a little anticlimactic. Like it's one of the biggest explosions, but the fuel tanks didn't go up.
well
That's what
that
she
was attempt number 1. The big explosion that got on the list for big explosions in human history happened with attempt number 2. So they built another rocket. They improved the design. They insulated shit. They made sure that if one fire line set off, it wouldn't destroy the electrical system. That stuff would keep on going, and it was that decision that sealed their fate. So, attempt number 2, the rocket flew normally for 10 seconds. It got high up in the air. All of a sudden, it tipped on its side and headed towards the ground. Now, the aftermath, they discovered that a loose screw plugged a liquid oxygen line. So, they don't know where the loose screw came from. They can't locate it, but it plugged the little intake of that oxygen line.
Like your
One time,
oxygen
her loose
intake.
screw plugged my liquid oxygen line, and I cummed into my bladder.
Oh boy, that's no good.
Are they attached? Yeah, they are.
They are. Actually, it's called retrograde ejaculation when you ejaculate into your bladder.
Yeah,
And then when
Google
you pee later on, it's kind of stringy.
It's like a stringy pee.
That might hurt.
The more
It doesn't,
you know.
actually. In fact, if you're getting ready to come and you don't actually want to make a mess, if you apply pressure to the base of your penis right in front of your asshole, like press on it pretty hard, you can cause retrograde ejaculation actually come into your bladder and nothing comes out, still benefit of the orgasm. You just have to be like on it at the right time and press pretty hard, but it'll keep you from making a mess. And then later on, you just take a piss and it's stringy.
There you go.
Learn something every day.
So the first attempt, the explosion.
Dry orgasm. Sorry.
No problem. So the first attempt, all 30 engines shut down at once. The rocket hit the ground at a dead speed. The rocket wasn't propelling it into the ground. It just fell at gravity's speed. Now, they added extra insulation to prevent the electricals from shutting down immediately. And because of that, with the second explosion caused by that screw in the oxygen pipe, all engines but engine number 18 shut down, so there was one engine still going, which means when it hit the ground, it was propelled into the ground by the force of a rocket engine at a much higher speed than before. Immediately, 680 tons of kerosene exploded. Now, there was 2,300 tons of propellant on board, so only 15% of it actually ignited and exploded, but it still made the number 10 worst non-nuclear explosion in history. It threw debris 10 kilometers away. The explosion was visible from 38 kilometers away, and all windows within 10 miles shattered. According to the Russians, there were 0 fatalities. Yeah.
I'm a little dubious. I think that's a little dubious that nobody died from that kind of a shockwave.
Yeah, especially since the rocket kind of went in a direction that wasn't expected, and yeah, there was a lot of carnage, and there was a lot of buildings flattened by the explosion.
So it landed in a city?
Oh no, it landed off the landing pad, but everything within 10 miles was shattered. So all the glass within 10 miles. So there was a lot of people within that radius. But of course, the Soviets say there were 0 fatalities.
Yeah, well, it's old school Russia. They don't want to say, "Hey, we just killed a bunch of people." U.S.
Yeah.
Top that.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like the Mike-class submarines all over again.
Yeah.
Nobody died. Nope. We never built a submarine. Mm-mm.
Number 2 is the Occultae explosion in Germany. Happened on 21st September 1921.
That's my son.
So the N1 launch explosion was 1 kiloton, so 1,000 tons of TNT. The Occultae explosion was 1.5 kilotons. Now, the Occultae was caused by a fertilizer plant. So there's a safe-ish version of fertilizer known as ammonium sulfate, and there's a more dangerous version known as ammonium nitrate.
And ammonium nitrate is what Timothy McVeigh used to bomb the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma.
Sure is.
Yes, that is true. And just a fun fact, there are no manufacturers of ammonium nitrate left in the United States or North America, for that matter.
I'm Googling it.
That makes
I don't
sense
believe
because
you.
ammonium nitrate makes up for 3 of the 10 big explosions on this list.
Because they had a big explosion, probably spoiler, but they had a big explosion at one of the plants where it manufactures.
Oh, yes.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah,
they didn't stop because of Tim McVeigh, though.
No. And
no.
at that particular plant, there's some really incredible video on YouTube of the actual explosion, and seeing the shockwave roll across the desert is pretty intense.
50 pounds for $75. Shit.
You're gonna learn over this entire episode is gonna play like an ad for operational health and safety. Like this is why work regulations are in place, because because like a lot of these are small mistakes that led to catastrophic problems. So
you can buy it on Alley.
Yeah. So basically on here.
I'll buy some today. Yeah.
So when they mix ammonium sulfate and ammonium nitrate together, it's a damn good fertilizer. It makes plants grow like a motherfucker because there's a whole bunch of trapped energy inside there that plants can liberate. And at the time, they thought that if you mixed with less than 60% ammonium nitrate, it had a low chance of exploding. Now, that was the thought at the time. Today's chemistry thinks that explosions as little as 30% are still explosive. So they were using double that. And also, with the war happening, of course, this was 1921, so this was after the First World War when supplies were limited. They had to change their mixtures in order to better fit the economy. So the manufacturing changed. The humidity of the mixture changed from 4% to 2%. The density went down, which meant there was more surface area to burn. Mm-hmm. And the mixing took less time, and afterwards they discovered that means the ammonium nitrate wasn't fully mixing into ammonium sulfate, which means that there were pockets of pure ammonium nitrate in the mixture. Now, when you mix these things together, it's a damn good fertilizer, but they have a habit of clumping together. So sometimes when they're going to ship shipments out, it all got clumped together and they had to loosen it up and put it into bags before they could ship it out. Now, if you're dealing with a potentially explosive substance, how would you loosen it up? And it's kind of like a type of concrete where it hardens up, and they would have giant towers full of the stuff that's all hardened up.
I hate when my giant tower hardens up.
Oh, me too.
I love it when it hardens up.
Yeah. What's wrong with you?
Yeah. So
it's just inconvenient when I'm swimming.
Okay, well, yeah.
So
touche.
So before they would have people with pickaxes come in and start chipping that thing apart. And when they started chipping it apart, people were starting to suffocate and all that because of all the noxious fumes involved. So they thought, we can't put people inside these big tanks to chip it apart. So what we're going to do is we're going to use dynamite.
Oh, just like bang it apart.
Yeah, and according to the knowledge at the time, we have a 50-50 mixture of ammonium sulfate and ammonium nitrate. So this thing isn't going to explode because according to the science at the time, it's not going to explode. It has to be more than 60%. We have a 50-50 mixture.
Oh, easy peasy.
And before that, they had 20,000 firings, but that was with the old formula. They didn't have these new changes that made it a little more explosive.
Right.
So one morning, with the new mixture, they decided to loosen up a giant tank of 4,500 tons of this fertilizer.
Holy shit, 4,500 tons.
Yep, and it's theorized that they put some dynamite, and now remember when I said it wasn't mixed properly, that there were some pockets of pure ammonium nitrate? Mm-hmm. They thought that they put a dynamite right inside the pocket of one of those. And when it exploded, the entire factory exploded.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable.
Yeah. So the entire factory exploded. There was a train a mile away that was blown right off its tracks.
Oh, boy.
Now, when did this occur, roughly?
1921.
Okay, so this is one of the earlier ones.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Is the Halifax explosion on your list?
Oh, yes.
Oh, definitely. That's got to be, almost 3 kilotons.
Yeah. Number 3. 80% of buildings were destroyed, and it left 6,500 people homeless. This explosion was also known as the Church Ripper. Because
Church Ripper.
The church.
That's my new funk.
Yeah,
funk
it was
band.
known as
The funk band is pretty good.
It's when you cut a nasty fart at the pulpit.
Yeah. The Church Ripper. So I'm so sorry, Ood. Actually, I'm not.
Cool.
Oh, it's all good.
Called the church.
Yeah, so it was called the Church Ripper because it was called the Church Ripper because in Opau there was a whole bunch of little villages that had the old medieval churches. And there was actually tours at the time looking at all the stained glass of all these saints and all that. And it was called the Church Ripper because all the stained glass within 25 miles was broken and destroyed.
Someone on Twitter is going to yell at me for interrupting you.
That's all right. Yeah, it's okay. The episodes get to be longer, and I get to cut more stuff out. It's all good.
I'm okay if you leave it on there.
Yeah, so all buildings for 25 kilometers had their roofs ripped off of them.
That's what
so
she said.
A lot of the architecture in Germany at that time had these little square buildings with these big roofs, kind of like an umbrella. And of course, when the shockwave came, it just lifted those roofs right off the houses.
Pew, 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 pew.
560 people died, and it created a crater 400 feet across and 30 feet deep.
Nice.
The explosion was heard 300 kilometers away in northern France.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, yeah. Next up is the Port Chicago disaster. This one rates in at 1.8 kilotons. So we've
Sorry
already...
to interrupt.
Yep.
I was going to ask, are you going to have that Chinese fireworks explosion?
Yeah.
Oh, that one is actually 0.04 kilotons. So it's way below the threshold. But if you go to the non-nuclear explosions on Wikipedia, it's on there. So Port Chicago disaster happened on July 17th, 1944 in Port Chicago, USA, and it registered in as 1.8 kilotons. So
much as I register into.
Oh, yeah. So African Americans weren't allowed to join the military at that time. So they got the shitty jobs. And the shittiest of the shitty jobs was loading live ammunition into boats.
Was it like on South Park, Operation Get Behind the Darkies?
Yeah, it's a lot like that. So they got these African Americans to lift up this heavy, explosive, dangerous shit and load it onto the ships with no training or safety precautions.
Yep.
What could go wrong?
Absolutely nothing.
Yeah. So on top of that, sailors were told the munitions couldn't explode without a charge attached. So they were just flat out told these things won't explode no matter what you do to them. They were loading all kinds of ammunition. So Port Chicago was a huge port for every kind of munition you could imagine, all the way from the 2mm Colibri bullet, which is a fifth of a gram, all the way to the VB-6 Felix bomb, which weighed 1,200 pounds.
Yikes.
It gets worse. They held speed contests. So the foremen of these shipping yards would hold contests saying, like, who can ship these explosives into the ships the fastest?
Shipping ships.
Yes. The foremen also allowed all safety precautions to be turned off. So the cranes and the winches at that time had safety levers to prevent them from going too far to one side or too far to another. And if you were a responsible foreman, you would install them so you wouldn't, like, turn it enough to bang shit together, especially when it's explosives. But of course, since
as a bisexual person, I also have levers that keep me from going too far to one side and too far to the other.
There you go.
What levers are they? Because honestly, like I yo-yo from all dick to all pussy regularly.
I don't know. I'm just kind of like in the middle. Like I don't
That's
know.
fair.
Yeah. I don't really yo-yo.
I just think John Cusack's cute.
It's just everything. Everything is
I
good.
want Terry Crews to rock me to sleep.
So you're more pansexual really than anything.
Well, I don't really identify with the term pansexual though.
How come?
I don't know.
I don't either.
I heard bisexual first, and that was a good one.
I identified as pansexual for a while, and then I decided it was too exotic a label.
Maybe a really nice treated cast iron, but
I just don't like how they used it on Lando. That sucked.
Yeah, so they made speed contests. So they got people to load the boats as quickly as possible. They bypassed all safeties. And nobody knows exactly what happened, but you can kind of guess.
Idiots happen.
So somebody on the shore a long ways away heard the sound of smashing metal.
Me too.
And there was a small popping explosion, just a little pit. And there was a fire
Can you make that noise again?
And there was a fire that burned for 5 to 7 seconds. So they heard a tiny little explosion. They saw a fire burn on the dock for 5 to 7 seconds. And then they saw a much bigger explosion. So they had 8,000 pounds of munitions. This produced a fireball 5 kilometers in diameter.
Damn.
Spicy meatball.
That is my ass.
Remember, in the center of this fireball were millions of bullets. And they were being detonated and fired in all directions.
Not like my ass.
So what you're saying there? So what you're saying is, for a second, that it was ultimate dodgeball with bullets for a minute.
Yeah, see, if you can dodge a bullet, you can dodge a ball.
One of the boats being loaded weighed 8,000 tons, and it was thrown 600 feet away from the initial explosion. It landed in the water, but was still thrown 600 feet away. There were boxcars that were a mile away. So remember the last explosion? Boxcars were a mile away. They just got tipped on their tracks.
Yeah.
This time, the boxcars got crushed like aluminum cans. Like, they didn't have time to move off the tracks. The force was so immediate that they crushed like aluminum cans before they got thrown off. 320 people died, 390 were injured, and 2/3 of the deaths and the injured were African Americans because they had the shit jobs.
Rest their souls.
Yeah. All right. Next up is the RAF Fald explosion. Now, again, operational health and safety comes in again. So this happened in 1944 in Stratfordshire, UK.
Stratfordshire.
This was an old mine that was converted into a munitions storage. I forgot to look up what mine it was, but basically this mine was gutted out. It had nothing left. So they decided to convert it into an underground munition storage factory. Now, if you stored all your bombs in a warehouse, the enemy could just come over and bomb the warehouse. There go all your bombs. If you bury it super deep underground, unless they have some bunker-busting stuff, they're not going to get your explosives. So they decided, hey, let's make this old mine into a storage facility. The problem is that when they bought that mine and started outfitting it in 1944, they didn't predict how big and how long and how massive World War II was going to be. So the factories kept on pumping out these bombs to meet demand because they needed way more bombs than they thought. But unfortunately, this tiny little mine didn't have enough space. And it started to become way too full. So these bombs were piled up in the mine floor to ceiling. And it got so bad that at one time there's a whole bunch of live bombs piled outside the mine waiting to be placed inside the mine. Again, on the day of the explosion, the CO was on leave. The CO's deputy was on leave. The CO's deputy's deputy was on leave, leaving a bunch of mostly untrained workers to take care of the mine. They were all overworked. These people, the military personnel in particular, had worked 20-hour days for weeks on end, trying to load all the shit into this mine. The other people they had working on it were German POWs and untrained laborers they paid from towns around. Now, when you're working with live explosives, you have to make sure you don't do anything stupid that's going to cause a spark. If everybody that's there isn't looking after safety precautions, a mistake might be had. There was a report of a worker seen using a brass chisel to remove a detonator. So before you put these bombs inside of this mine, you have to remove the detonator so they don't blow up in the mine on you. So usually you use a wooden wedge, because guess what? Wooden wedges don't cause sparks. But this guy, who was untrained, who had nobody call him out on it, started removing detonators with a brass chisel.
I'm just picturing this like Bugs Bunny. Tap, 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 dud.
Oh, yes.
Or you're just looking at it swarming. Yeah, I could do it. It's cool.
Yeah. So there was no watchman on the gate. There's nobody keeping watch. There's nobody calling out safety shit. So this guy used a brass chisel to remove a detonator, and that bomb exploded. And that bomb exploded, made all the other bombs explode.
Oh, Jesus.
So it was like a chain reaction, like a dominoes effect, basically.
So what you're saying, it was V for Vendetta in a mine.
Oh, pretty much. Now, Port Chicago disaster. I hope that's public domain. It's what, 1917?
It's got to be public domain.
Oh, I hope so.
It has to.
Maybe not the 16-minute rendition. Okay, but definitely the one with cannon
Disney
fire.
hasn't bought it yet, so it's public domain.
Yeah. So this was a 2-kiloton explosion. So nobody that was there survived, and this mine wasn't near anything. That's why they picked it to be a munitions factory. The only thing that they have really right afterwards was aerial photos. When you look at these aerial photos, you can confuse it with the face of the moon. There is nothing left. It is devoid of plants. It is devoid of any geological features. It is just a blank space. There was a farm nearby the mine. It was obliterated. They found no trace of the farm. They found no trace of the cattle on it. There was a reservoir with 450 million pounds of water. It was obliterated. All that water turned to steam in a minute and eliminated. Now, because everybody was gone, the CEO, the deputy's deputy, because all those people were gone, only 70 people died.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, so everybody there was just wiped out. Yeah, if you look up the RAF fault explosion, it just looks like the surface of the moon. It's just blasted away. Next up is the Evangelos Flores explosion, which happened on Cyprus on 11th of July, 2011. So this is one that only happened a few years ago, and the rest of these are like in the 40s and shit.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of this. I don't think I'm remembering this from anything.
I think it's not as noticeable because people don't care about Cyprus because it's not U.S. and it's not Russia, and it's just it's one of these proxy companies that's used as a pawn against the big powers. And
it's like the shitty armpit of Greece.
Yeah.
Ah, fair enough. Oh, you can't say that. Robin Williams' character for Good Morning Vietnam was from there.
Good.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. I'm watching The Office.
So basically, the U.S. was keeping very careful eye on Iran and Syria and Russia and all that, and they were keeping track of weapons moving. So the U.S. Navy had seized a ship transporting 98 shipping containers of small bombs. Now, when I say small bombs, the biggest of all these bombs were only 90 pounds. So these last explosions had huge, giant bombs, but only a few of them. This one had tens of thousands of small bombs.
Oh, so it just had like a whole bunch of those little bomblets that come out of the bomblet dispensers on the... Well, who is it that has it? The standoff dispensers from like the F-22s and that.
Pretty much. Like, these are bombs that you would be able...
Up.
These are bombs.
There are bomb dispensers?
Oh, like one thing with a big one was with the German Air Force, the Tornado, the GR4.
Tornado.
The Tornado?
Tornado.
Okay, Tornado. Is that it would have a huge canister and it would just have like hundreds of little bombs in it and they would just drop.
It's like a rotary dispenser. It just kind of shits out bomblets.
Okay, so it's like it would be like bomb vending machine.
Yeah, it
exactly.
Would be like, it would be like mini carpet bombing pretty much.
Yeah.
Oh, fun. Okay.
Yeah, we're going to learn a little bit more about that later.
Thank you, and sorry.
Oh, no problem.
I'm not sorry.
Yeah. So basically, the U.S. Navy captured a ship moving 98 shipping containers, so tens of thousands of these tiny bombs from Iran to Syria on a Russian-owned ship. So they captured this. They said, hey, we're not going to give your ground troops like tens of thousands of bombs they can just use against our ground troops. So they got an agreement with the Cyprus Navy to hold it in a Cyprus port.
Is Cyprus its own independent nation?
Yep.
Oh, it is. Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. And of course, so the U.S. and its allies wanted to get the bombs from Cyprus, but of course Cyprus is fairly close by to Syria, so Cyprus didn't want to piss off Syria by giving all this munitions to the other. So Cyprus kind of played like Sweden on this. They said, okay, we're not going to give the weapons to anyone. We're just going to keep it at our port, and like people can get off our backs, and Syria can't be mad, and America can't be mad. We're right in the middle. It wasn't touched for 2 years. Nobody knows exactly what happened, but on the 11th of July, 2011, a fire was started on the boat. It burned for an hour and 20 minutes. There weren't many people at that port. It was kind of a rarely used port in Cyprus, but a fire just burned for an hour and 20 minutes. And there were some preliminary crews that tried to put it out, but it didn't work. The bomb started detonating, and when one bomb detonates, the rest detonate. An explosion obliterated the naval base. All buildings were gone. Many had traveled home for the day because it was late in the day, but the people that were left were almost all obliterated. Where it really fucked Cyprus is it destroyed a $700 million power station that was nearby, and it plunged half of Cyprus into darkness. So it put 500,000 people into darkness and lack of electricity.
Okay, that would do it. That's
so they don't know how that fire started. They just
they have no clue what happened. They tried. Well,
espionage.
Yeah, it could be.
Well, a several kiloton explosion is a really good way of hiding evidence.
Yeah.
So it's hard to know exactly what happened.
It's hard to find out what happened when there's nothing left to figure out what happened.
Yeah. Yeah, so between that naval base being destroyed, the power plant coming down, and all this power being lost, which took years to get back up, it caused about 2 billion euros in damage, or 3 billion Canadian dollars in damage.
Damn.
Yeah, so basically U.S. was like, hey, hold on to this ship full of explosives for us. And Cyprus was like,
just hang on to it.
Yeah, and knowing the U.S., it was probably more like, hey, hold on to this ship for us, or we're going to like fuck your trading deals.
Yeah.
And it was held there for 2 years, and then Cyprus suffered $3 billion Canadian damage.
Oops.
Yep. Next up, this is something you mentioned, the Texas City disaster.
And Texas
of course,
City disaster is the name. Hey.
This was pretty recent, wasn't it?
No. It's the name of my new, like, carnival-y kind of country group.
Oh, yeah, like they have like a little bit of like the whimsy in the background and all that.
Yeehaw. So kind of like rednecks?
I kind of like that.
Okay.
There's got to be a brass tube in there. Bong, bong. Yeah, what were we going to say?
Now,
okay, just got to state, Richard Bigley and I know the Cotton Eye Joe by Rednecks line dance.
I know you do. I watched it at your wedding.
Oh, yes. Me too. I graduated as SIC. Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, wait, that's not SIC. What am I thinking of? Anyways. Yeah.
No, SIC is Proclaimers 500 miles.
Yeah,
I watched that one
right.
too, I'm sure, at your wedding.
What was it? Texas City disaster. That happened recently, like within the turn of the century, didn't it?
Oh, yeah, 1947.
Cotton Eye Joe was technical training.
Now there was another fertilizer related Texas City explosion that happened in the turn of the century, but it wasn't as big as this one. So if you're looking for Texas City disaster, you got to look for the 1947 instead of the not 1947 version.
BRB.
Yeah. So again, ammonium nitrate. Now they thought they had ammonium nitrate down pat this time. They said, okay, we use clay and wax to prevent clumping, so we don't have to use stuff to blow it apart. And it makes it very easy to transport. But again, it was wartime. There was a lot of pressure to put out this stuff really quickly, so there were steps mixed in the manufacturing. Again, nobody knows what happened for sure, but the only reports that we have credible, the people that made it out alive reported that some of the bags of fertilizer they were loading onto those ships felt hot to the touch, and they didn't know why. Now, bags of fertilizer should be room temperature, but these were hot to the touch for some reason. A fire was spotted at 8 a.m. in a cargo hold of a ship in Texas City, so in the Texas City harbor. The captain tried to put out the fire by opening steam pipes, so he basically opened up all the steam pipes in the cargo hold to try and smother the fire, trying to remove the oxygen, but it didn't work because ammonium nitrate makes its own oxygen when it heats up. And on top of that, when you add moisture to an ammonium nitrate fire, you convert some of that ammonium nitrate into nitrous oxide. For any of you that's seen the Fast and the Furious movies, that's when they hit the big red button and they go, whoa! It's a highly volatile burning
Those movies
substance.
are the worst.
Oh, yes.
You're going to space next.
Yeah. So the fire burned for an hour. They tried their damnedest to stop it. When you have something that makes its own oxygen that can burn underwater, it's hard to stop. So 9 a.m., spectators gathered on the shore, watching the ship burn. They saw the firefighters go in. They're like, oh, it's safe. We can watch from the shore. The firefighters are putting it out. It is then that a shipment of 2,200 tons of fertilizer exploded. It created a 15-foot tidal wave that hit all shores within 300 miles. Yikes. Immediately, 1,000 buildings were leveled and 3,500 were damaged beyond repair. 2 scouting airplanes, who were 3,000 feet up, had their wings blown completely off and they crashed to the ground. 1,100 vehicles and 362 freight cars were torn apart and destroyed. A 2-ton anchor from the ship in question was launched 3 kilometers.
Holy crap.
Yeah. This resulted in 567 dead, including all but one of the fire department, who was sick that day. And there was 5,000 people injured. And that's a 2.8 kiloton explosion.
Damn.
Yep.
Talk about ways to get like PTSD. That would be one hell of a way to get it.
Oh, yeah. And talk about like survivor's guilt and all that, being the only fireman left and you stayed home because you were sick.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Tummy hurt.
I mean, I've had guilt from like calling in sick, and my coworkers were like, "Where the hell were you yesterday? It was really busy." And I was like, "Oh fuck." I mean,
fuck those coworkers.
I know. I think you know some of those coworkers. Eh?
Yep.
Okay. Now, this is the one we've been waiting for. I'm gonna get a clip from the wonderful Mike from Dark Poutine because he did an entire episode on this.
Oh, Dark Poutine's a good podcast.
Yeah. So this is the Halifax explosion. It weighs in at 2.9 kilotons. Now, there's a reason that this explosion is famous because it's a huge loss of life and damage.
Wasn't this the number one man-made explosion in history until like a little while ago?
It's the worst non-nuclear accidental man-made explosion in history.
I was always interested in how that happened.
This is a fun story, but pretty much, might I spoil it just a little bit?
Yeah, go ahead.
Pretty much what happened is that there was an ammunition ship, and there was the other one
the
was
Mont Blanc.
Yeah, and the Mont Blanc, and pretty much it caught on fire and collided with after it collided with another ship.
Oops.
Is that?
That's correct.
That is correct. Okay.
Well, the sequence of events are a little different than that.
Oh, okay.
So basically, there was these 2 ships. There were a Norwegian ship called the SS Emo.
Me too. I'm the SS Emo.
Yeah, and a French ship called the SS Mont Blanc.
You say a friendship?
Yes, it was French because we were helping the French in World War One.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Oui.
I heard friendship.
Now,
Not friendship.
now the SS Emo was a huge whaling ship. So whaling ships are not known for their ability to turn on a dime.
I'm also a whaling ship, not known for my ability to turn on a dime.
Like,
No, you're not.
They're built for going out on open ocean, and when they catch a whale, it has to be big enough that they can drag the whale into the belly of the ship and
Same.
One of my
butcher it.
ex-girlfriends were whales.
We don't fat shame, except for when I'm doing it to myself.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
You can fat shame me if you
Black
want.
man's
Yeah, but
kryptonite.
these whaling ships had lots of cargo room because they were built to transport fucking whales. So the Norwegians were donating all these ships in order to have supplies going in and out of these ports, and Canada was using these ships to have supplies. Now the Mont Blanc was transporting explosives. They had
Like you do.
2,366 tons of pyric acid,
Nice.
which is a highly explosive.
It's a primer for ammunition to set it off, isn't it?
Yeah.
Ooh, damn.
Oh, it's a primary.
Primer for
It's a
ammunition.
primary high
Set it
explosive, which
off.
means it explodes easily. They also had 256 tons of TNT, 600 tons of gun cotton, and
Gun cotton. Okay, that's the name of my new, new metal rap rock group.
and several thousand tons of a highly volatile liquid accelerant. So now this is between a French ship and a Norwegian ship, the SS Emo and the SS Mont Blanc. But really, the one that fucked it up, in my opinion, was the SS Clara, which was an American ship. So basically, in this harbor, there was a lane for ships going out and a lane for ships going in. The SS Clara left the harbor on the wrong side of the fucking harbor. So the Norwegian ship, the SS Emo, had to make a drastic turn to avoid hitting this American ship that was on the wrong side of the fucking boat highway.
Somehow the Americans, whatever they do, they don't even have to be trying to go to war or to claim oil or anything. They just fuck shit up.
Yeah. So the SS Emo veered away from the American ship because they didn't want to hit the American ship, and it veered into the oncoming lane. After a while, it tried to correct itself. And boats are a lot like semis. They can't stop at a dime. They can't turn sharply. It takes them a while to do anything.
Yeah, especially at that in that age.
Yeah, it tried.
And another point is you have to remember these ships, they don't turn from the front. The front doesn't start turning.
Yep.
The back moves.
Yeah. Yeah, so it tried to correct itself, but there was another one, a tugboat.
Okay, well, I'm really sad. I just Googled it, and SS Emo is not spelled EMO, it's spelled IMO.
Correct. The tugboat Stella Morris is
I'm gonna
also...
start singing some mindless...
Yeah.
Sorry.
So a tugboat called the Stella Morris was also on the wrong side of the harbor. So even though the SS Emo tried to correct itself, it couldn't, because one time there was an American ship in its way, and now there's a fucking tugboat. So it had to veer even more sharply into oncoming traffic.
Why didn't they just take out the tugboat? It's just a tugboat.
Well, that's the question. It was the call of the captain, and when there was a trial afterward, they determined that everybody was at fault. Everybody fucked up. The tugboat shouldn't have been in that lane. The American ship shouldn't have been in that lane. The Norwegian ship should have just took out the tugboat instead of taking out the munition ship. And the SS Mont Blanc should have had its warning flags up to tell people... Mont Blanc, to have its flags up to tell people it was a munition ship.
Oh boy!
You should have pulled like the Exxon boat driver and just said, "I'm drunk." Yeah.
Oh boy. Yeah. So collision was intimate, not intimate, but it's about to become intimate. The SS Mont Blanc sounded its horns, but it was too late. The SS Emo tried to turn, and it almost missed, and it scraped against the hull of the French ship. And it actually didn't do all that much damage. It was sort of a save until the sparks started that highly flammable accelerant on fire. Again, the fire started at 8:45. All the people of Halifax started to gather on the shore and were like, "Why is this boat burning in our harbor?" And they started to watch it. So that started at 8:45. So they watched this boat burn for about 20 minutes when at 9:04 a.m., an explosion occurred. And it was a 2.9 kiloton explosion. There was an 18 millimeter gun on the French ship. This 18 millimeter gun weighing 19,000 pounds.
18 millimeter or 18 inch?
18 millimeter.
18 millimeter is not that big. That's hardly bigger than 50 cal.
Well, look up the side of the gun. It's huge.
That's what she said. Anyway.
It was... So it weighed... Yeah,
That is what she said.
So it launched this 18 millimeter, 19,000 pound gun 6 kilometers. All buildings within 2 kilometers were flattened. There was a cotton mill 2.5 kilometers away that was made completely of concrete. When the shockwave hit it, the walls, floor, and roof of the concrete building shattered and collapsed in its own footprint.
Damn.
Within 1,000 feet of the center of the explosion, the temperatures were about 5,000 degrees Celsius. So if you were 1,000 feet from this explosion, it was 5,000 degrees Celsius. What made it worse is when the Norwegian ship, the SS Imo, hit the French ship, it provided momentum that made it listfully drift closer and closer to Halifax as it burned. So it was nearing the Halifax shore as it detonated.
Oh, Jesus.
Just like ominously floating towards them.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody get the hell out!
So the
They're all like, oh.
So the SS Imo. So now I have the number correct. The ship, the SS Imo, weighed 18,000 tons. It was lifted 30 feet into the air above the water and tossed onto the adjoining shore. The explosion caused a cavication. So that means the bottom of the Halifax harbor was exposed. And that caused a 60-foot...
Bottom of my harbor's exposed.
Oh, boy. That caused a 60-foot tidal wave. Now, with that amount of water, just millions of pounds of water slamming back together, it produced another shock wave, and it produced a second tidal wave that was 30 feet high. And it exposed the bottom of the harbor again. It then clashed back together and produced a third tidal wave that was 10 feet high.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, so if you were a citizen on the shore, this is what you experienced. You experienced a shock wave that knocked buildings down that were 5,000 degrees Celsius. So basically, the shock wave knocked all the buildings down, and then the heat came and burned everything with a 5,000 degree heat.
So everyone was pretty much obliterated.
Oh yeah,
Just
then a 60-foot tidal wave, then a 30-foot tidal wave, then a 10-foot tidal wave, about 6 seconds behind each other.
So that'll be like 3 tsunamis right after each other?
Yep,
pretty much. And I'm just thinking, some poor bastard a few miles away, probably got his shadow burned into the building he was.
Yeah. So, of course, people have seen the historical minutes on this, so I'm going to insert that because it's public domain. But there's a man named Patrick Coleman that stayed on the radio, and the radio tower was right near the shore. So he knew he was going to be fucked.
My God, look at that. Yeah, thank God she's a half a mile away. Huh?
She's loaded, boys. You gotta get out of here. It's full of explosives.
Children, come on.
Oh, no. No, get out of here. Vince!
Going back in the school.
Please, get these children out of here. That ship is gonna blow. No!
Mr. Coleman.
Hurry! Hurry! You gotta get these people out of here. That ship is gonna blow. The train.
What?
People, get out of here. It's gonna blow up.
Ignition ship on fire. Stop train. Please, God, answer.
Coleman, there's no time.
The train's coming in towards Pier 6. I've got to warn you.
Come on, Vince, come on. There are 700 people aboard it. I've got to stop it. Come on, acknowledge.
Halifax was devastated. 9,000 wounded, 2,000 dead, including Vince Coleman, dispatcher.
Instead of evacuating, he decided to stay in the radio tower and radio the train. And because of that, the train stopped and the train wasn't caught in the explosion. So he saved the lives of 300 people on that train.
Good for Patrick.
In total, 1,950 people died, 9,000 people were injured, and 31,000 people were left homeless.
Holy shit.
Jesus.
Yep.
Yeah, because that destroyed entire suburbs. Like the African community down there, that was gone.
Oh, yeah.
That was just leveled.
Yeah, actually, yeah. If you listen,
He's allowed to say that because he's not worried.
If you listen, if you listen to the Dark Poutine episode, they talk about that, where basically there was this community of people who had gotten away from like the Jim Crow laws in the States and all that, and they started to like build a life for themselves and all that.
Yeah,
and
Black Wall Street would be that. Sorry about interrupt there, Rude.
Oh, no problem.
Interrupt away.
And
I've been doing it. I'm sure that he's about to smack me.
Oh, it's all good. But the entire population of all those people were just wiped out. So an entire culture of people who survived slavery, who survived discrimination, made their way to Canada, made a life for themselves, wiped out in an instant.
In fucking Halifax.
Yeah. Now, You notice
Where's
that?
Saskatchewan?
Oh boy.
Hey, Halifax is a beautiful and vibrant community.
So is Saskatchewan.
No, it's not.
Direct all your hate.
I'm with him on this one. The Saskatchewan's pretty bland.
Yeah, direct all your hate mail towards
Hey,
sagemarieov@gmail.com.
Half of my family moved here.
Let
so
it
I don't
wash
know.
over me. Lord Loki's on my team.
Oh yeah.
Well, it's because of my family. That's
Yeah.
about it.
I like
Lord Loki's family's on my team.
I like seafood, so I'm a fan of Halifax.
I've never been to Halifax.
Thank you.
I actually would probably think that.
I'm not even sure if seafood comes from Halifax.
Seafood does come from Halifax.
They have lobster
Yeah.
and stuff.
Okay.
They definitely do.
Okay,
So seafood would come from Vancouver and
More
Halifax?
crabs per capita, according to Richard Bigler.
Pretty much anywhere that has a port.
Okay.
Pubs. I thought you said crabs.
So you know,
crabs.
the
Down
first
to 20th Street I go. Yay.
so the first 8 entries on this list were accidental. The last 2 are purposeful. So these are
What?
So these were done on purpose.
You serious?
Oh yes. The first one is Heliogoland.
Okay.
What?
Say that again.
HELIGO land.
Okay, wait.
So helo as in blood? Or helo as
That's
in
hemo
gas?
as in blood.
Oh, sorry.
Helio-
I'm kind of
A-
loopy.
HELIGO.
So what would
land.
helo be?
HELIGO.
Helo is like helicopter.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so basically this island was a small German
It's in
island.
Germany.
Oh yes.
Sorry.
It was
I found it. I believe you.
It was a small German island. It was about 4 kilometers square, and it was shaped roughly the size of a bird beak.
Yeah. Helo is helicopter. Helio is sun. Hemo is blood.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, Helio, your blood.
Oh, by the way, this explosion was 3.2 kilotons. So basically, this place was very well situated to be a German naval powerhouse. So it had giant cliffs that rose 200 feet above the surf.
Me too.
So boats that were approaching couldn't attack people on the shore. And because they were 200 feet up and cannons can only fire so far. And if they were going to get close enough to attack, they had cannons and munitions lined up all along. So if you were approaching this island, you would see a giant 200-foot cliff face in your wake. So the Germans were easily able to defend this island, and this island was so close to the UK that it was a naval threat to them. And they tried to take this island again and again and again and failed because it was so well fortified. The UK finally captured it in 1945 with an aerial assault involving 72 airplanes and over 7,000 bombs dropped. That wasn't the big explosion. That was just capturing the island. So basically, the UK captured that island, and now Germany wasn't able to use it as a port anymore. But after dropping 7,000 bombs, basically all the main ports and all the main naval centers that Germany had on that island were destroyed. What they did to disable the island forever. So the reason the island was so well fortified is because of those giant cliffs. If you've ever looked up the cliffs of Dover in Ireland, it looks very much like that.
Solid as the Rock of Gibraltar.
Oh, yes. So basically...
That's what she said. That's what she said.
Basically, the UK was like, hypothetically, if Germany ever recaptures this island, it's going to be used as a naval fortress again because it's really fucking hard to attack because of these giant cliffs. So they said, what if we use a shit ton of explosions to level this island and eliminate those cliffs?
Oh boy.
Yeah. So they detonated 6,700 tons of explosives. There was no casualties. There was nobody because they evacuated the whole island before. So after those 6,700 tons of explosions were detonated, those 200-foot cliffs were now reduced to about 30 feet high.
Oh my gosh, they just like fucked a whole island, like just in case.
Oh yeah, definitely. Cause
yeah.
if you look at it, this isn't like the first time in history this has happened. There's been several occasions in past wars where nations just like, okay, this island's being a real pain in the ass, so let's just level the fuck out of it.
Oh, yeah.
Turn it into a lagoon.
I don't like that.
And what makes it worse is, like, before they decided to blow the fuck out of it, they were using it as a bombing range.
That's what she said.
Yeah, they were.
They were using it as a bombing range right on Germany's doorstep. So in the middle of World War II, they're like, hey, see what we can do? See what we can do on your little island? Yeah. And they blew it to shreds.
So it's basically a strategy move just to take out that.
Oh yeah, psychology. as a show of faith, when the war was over, the UK gave the island back to Germany in 1952, and it's now a tax-free haven holiday resort.
Take your flat-ass island.
You can book a 7-day stay at the all-inclusive resort for the low price of 1,200 euros.
So what Britain said, it's damaged. So Britain said, it's damaged goods, Germany. Take it. It was mine before it was yours. There you go.
They're pretty much like, well, the cliffs are gone, so it can't be like a fortified motherfucking structure anymore, so we can give it back, and the Germans have turned it into a holiday resort.
No, but I love what they call the event that was the actual explosion. They call it either the Big Bang of I can't pronounce it, I'm not even going to bother, or the British Bang.
Yeah, the
British Bang. I like the British. Okay, British Bang is the name of my new electro sex tape also.
Yeah.
Oh. But also the name of my new electro EDM band.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. British Bang.
British Bang, baby.
Yeah, so
also the name of my sex tape.
So this is the #1 explosion in human history that was non-nuclear, man-made. It was called minor scale, and it also had a little
minor scale.
Minor scale, because it was the biggest explosion people could make that wasn't nuclear.
That's fun.
It was 4 kilotons of of explosive. So basically, and it was designed to see, can we make a nuclear-like explosion with conventional explosives?
Yes.
So what they did is they built a giant fiberglass dome about 50 feet high and about 150 feet in diameter.
Like you do.
Like a giant half circle sitting in the desert.
Is that like a cupola? Cupola?
Cupola.
Cupola. I forget how it was pronounced.
Cupola.
Now, just one question before we continue. Did we actually explain to the viewers what 1 kiloton of an explosion would be?
We don't have viewers.
Oh, a kiloton. A kiloton is
the equivalent of 1,000 pounds of TNT.
You got it.
Okay, just for the record, so the listeners. Now, if we look at this, sorry for spoiling the future episode, but if we look at it, Hiroshima, which was the lowest nuclear explosion actually used, even though it was one of the 2 used on a civilian population, was 20 kilotons.
Oh yeah.
So this is 1/5 of the size of the Hiroshima bomb.
Oh, wait till you get to the volcanoes. Volcanoes are OP.
Oh god, yes.
I love volcanoes.
Nerf volcanoes. So that's why there's going to be a nuclear episode and a volcanic episode.
I really want to come back for both.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so
can I come back too?
Yeah, come on back.
All right.
Everyone's always welcome.
So minor scale, basically
my dog might bite you again.
They took this
I
giant
love your dog now.
They took this giant fiberglass dome and they filled it up with ammonium nitrate and petroleum. 4,700 tons of it.
Oh my god.
And they basically evacuated everyone within a large distance.
Get the fuck out, we're blowing shit up.
They set up a bunch of mannequins and a bunch of buildings and a bunch of hey, let's see what happens if we blow stuff up near this. And they set it off. Everything within 1.5 kilometers of the bomb were vaporized.
Yeah.
With temperatures that got as high as 300,000 Celsius.
What as hot as I am.
Yeah. Everything. If you were... Oh, yeah.
I can't stop. I'm sorry.
If you were...
No more liquor for you.
No, there's definitely going to be more liquor for me.
Everything.
This is my house.
There's always more liquor for her.
I'm not sure if you've met me, but I am a low-key alcoholic.
At the old studio, I used to drive Sage home every night. She was pretty tanked often.
Just my last year of university here. Well, not my last. I got 2 more to go, so fuck that. But I just on the couch one day playing Halo, okay, fuck, I'm thirsty, thinking that I'm going to go get a glass of water. I opened the fucking liquor cabinet. That's what I concluded. I might have a problem.
Oh, you don't have a problem. Child.
It's not a problem. It helps you. It relaxes you.
I instinctively went to the liquor cabinet when I thought I was thirsty.
Hey. Don't insult the liquor.
Yeah. It's okay. I'll allow it.
Yeah. So everything within 1.5 kilometers was vaporized with temperatures that got as high as 300,000 degrees Celsius. Everything within 7 kilometers, if you were something with human-like skin within 7 kilometers, you would receive third-degree burns, because everything within 7 kilometers got to a temperature of about 6,000 degrees Celsius. Everything within 7.5 kilometers were leveled by the air blast and the shockwave. So any type of building, that's any type of building at all, no matter how fortified, would be knocked down.
Just gone.
And there's there's levels of destruction as you go away. So stronger buildings survive a little more the further and further you get away, but up to 57 kilometers away, glass broke. So every pane of glass broke. There was heavy damage to light structures, and there was shrapnel up to 57 kilometers away. And also up to 57 kilometers away were potential for deafness and hearing damage if the shockwave hit you. And that's the biggest non-nuclear explosion man-made in human history.
That's awesome.
All right. With Occultae Veritatis, I'm Mood Gallifrey.
Sedge Murray.
Leon Filger.
And in studio with us,
Kaiser.
Lord Loki.
Until next time. Have a
Love
good
you,
night.
bye.
Cheers. Holy fuck, I gotta pee.
Alrighty. Biggest non-nuclear man-made explosions. Of course, the other two halves of this explosion series are going to be nuclear explosions and natural explosions. But to play us out, a song that's associated in the minds of many with explosions, this is the finale of the 1812 Overture by Peter Ilyich Tchaikovsky. So a lot of the things we've done on the podcast, oh yeah, I'm Ood Gallifrey, welcome to the after show. A lot of the things we've done on the podcast stem from one of us making a joke and then all of us wanting to basically either dare or pressure or peer pressure each other into actually doing it. And that's how the first annual Genital Cosplay Contest was started. We thought, there's some podcasts out there that throw Halloween accounts. Why can't we do something a bit different, something that can, help people connect and help people connect with their sexualities and have a little fun doing it and, do some self-exploration while making your dick look like various things. And we came up with a Genital Cosplay Contest. And the basic rules are, it opens up now. Traditionally, it opens up in October, but hell, if you want to come in early, feel free. So, dress your genitals, and genitals can be, if you consider your boobs genitals, then that's fine. If you consider your dick genitals, your butt genitals, hell, if you consider your knees genitals, dress them up. Put a costume on them. Playing to the hosts might work, but be creative. Like, dress your genitals as something you would want to take out on the town, like something you would want to show off, like, hey, look at my dick, it's a Dalek. Yeah, so by the end of October, send that in, and the prize we're offering is twofold. One, you're going to get a free t-shirt from us. We're going to send and mail that to you. And number two, you can force us to cover any topic of your choosing. Do you want us to explore the dark history of cardboard boxes? Just win the Genital Cosplay Contest. You get a free t-shirt. You get to force us to do whatever we want, and the hosts get to have a giggle and look at some genitals dressed up as various things. Just to get your brains a-cooking, these are some past entries. The last year's winner was Richard Plum from the Learn Me Something podcast. He dressed up his dick like a Dalek, and he played me like a fiddle, because Ood Gallifrey, I'm a Doctor Who fan. Yeah, big surprise. We had somebody that was a Pokemon fan, and they had a golem, the third evolution of Geodude, crawling out of their vagina. So, very nice. We had a woman send in her dick, dressed up like a French maid outfit. Like, it had a little, like those black and white little French maid outfits, and the head of her dick even had like a little frill on the top. It was just like, it was great. And there was a half a dozen other ones, and we actually made we went hardcore and we made a rubric to judge it. But yeah, details. Send in your genitals dressed up as whatever you want by the end of October. The next episode after that, we're going to rate them and pick the winner, and if you win, you get a free t-shirt and force us to do an episode of your choice. So yes, this is the announcement. That's what's happening. Abu Nud Gallifrey with the after show. Bless you, love you. You have lovely faces. I'm sure your feet are fine. And every other part of you is lovely as well. Have a wonderful evening.